Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My name is Aldo Matza, percussionist drummer, and I'm inviting you to please join me in a conversations with friends, artists, professionals, and experts in the music world. Today, I have the great honor of having my great friend, Walfredo Reyes Sr., who is, I was just telling him, it doesn't have history, he is history. And the really interesting thing about Walfredo is he is one of those people who had one foot in Cuba, one foot in the United States, and went back and forth. And I've worked a lot in Cuba for a little over 20 years, and meeting somebody like him who has been on both sides, has the history of both sides, carried one to the other, was a predecessor of many of the concepts that we've been exploring all of these years. It's interesting to see the man himself, who was also responsible for bringing drum set to percussion and that crossover hybrid playing, for lack of a better word, in all the styles and on both sides. So it's a really, really interesting, and it would take much more than one episode to cover that topic. But Walfredo, thank you so much for joining me on this one. Tell us a little bit about the history, where you started, how, and where that took you.
Born in Cuba, Havana, Cuba, La Habana, Cuba, in 1933. And of course, the very hard times, but I was born into a musical family. And my father played the trumpet. My uncles played also trombone. So my house was totally a musical house. I think the first things I heard were scales and trombone scales of my father and my other uncle Emilio, and they rehearsed there. A famous orchestra that came out on the scene in the 30s, the late 30s, that was called Casino de la Playa.
Okay.
So Casino de la Playa had a great singer by the name of Miguelito Valdez. Miguelito Valdez was very popular with the Cuban people. I mean, there were always lines outside my house waiting for him to come out and sign autographs. My father also was a very handsome man and played the trumpet and sung. So they all rehearsed there, and basically everyone that wanted to get their songs recorded, which there wasn't that much, came to see the orchestra. I'm talking about Rita Montaner and famous Cuban singer and actress, Rafael from Puerto Rico, singers from Mexico, you name it. They were always at my house, which is in the center of Havana, in La Calle San Rafael, which is a street, very popular street. So the house was big, and there was always music there. On top of that, there was a piano conservatory on the second floor, because there were two floors, the downstairs and upstairs. On the upstairs, piano conservatory. So at 9 a.m. in the morning, they started doing piano scales, and that's all I heard. I want to play. I wanted to ride my bicycle, but there was music all of the time.
Right. Must have been a great time to grow up and with music all around. But and also there were a lot of people going back and forth from between all the countries, especially that area.
Yeah. Cuba, Havana, and the rest of the whole island was and still is very musical in every way possible, because should we call it like if you go from Havana to Matanzas, how would you call that? A borough, like
What?
Manhattan and Brooklyn.
Well,
Yeah,
actually, I mean, that's a great distance. It's about 7, 8 hours by car, right?
no.
Oh, to
Matanzas is
Matanzas, that's
two.
an hour and a half. Yeah,
Yeah, an hour
yeah,
and a half. So, but each and every one of them had their own kind of different rhythms, and basically the same one. So Havana played the one go in one way, Matanzas played it another way, Santa Clara would play another way, Oriente, Santiago de Cuba, Guantanamo. They all had different uh, styles. I would say styles. You would know if you were from Havana when a musician from Oriente came in,
right,
because everybody wanted to live in the capital, which is Havana.
right. And
So
you also had a lot of influences. I mean, also in the earlier part of the century, I remember reading that in the 20s, Havana was, they called it the Paris of the Caribbean, of course, but they had, even in the opera, it was the center. Caruso and all of these people would be
yes,
in
yes,
Havana, and then New York, the Met would ask who is in Havana so that they can engage them to come to New York. It was apparently that was what was going on.
well, the thing was it was so close because you went to Havana uh, from Miami, from Key West, half an hour. So there was a lot of tourism, a lot of people influences musicians from the United States that we had in early 50s, I would say, that would go to Cuba to play, and vice versa. So we have a long line of very excellent jazz musicians that played at different nightclubs like the Tropicana, Sanssouci, Montmartre would always feature a group or jazz group from the United States. But when I say a group, you have like Cap Calloway, and he was at the Montmartre with. If you were jazz followers, he brought in Milton Hinton on bass. He had a Panama Francis on drums, and the great Cap Calloway. So we were all watching, you know, Milton and Cachao, Cuban bass player that was playing there at the time, became excellent friends.
Right. And Kecha was also one of the main figures in the 50s, right? Correct me if I'm
Oh
wrong,
yes, yes. He
in Cuba.
started. He started very young with Arcaño and did playing around until he went kind of on his own. But he was a great bass player. He played in the Havana Symphony for many years. He was part of the bass sections, uh, and his I call him my father because we were always together. I was amazed at being with him. The much that everything you learned from him, even when he spoke, you learn. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and there were many excellent, beautiful musicians of the time. Of that time, some have been forgotten. Some had uh, part in what we call today Latin jazz or this jazz or the other jazz, because the jazz thing was the format of putting jazz and Cuban rhythms and Cuban songs together. It wasn't only playing jazz, but to play the tune, a Cuban tune in a jazz form, or play an American tune in a Cuban form, which means put the clave in such and such a melody. So that was the greatest issue. What comes first, the melody or the rhythm? And to put the rhythm sometimes of Cuban rhythms in American tunes is kind of hard. It's like a good homework to do. You
Right.
know, you take all your tunes and just say to yourself, "Oh, let me put the clave." Oh, okay. and you could get a little bit complicated.
Right. But was that during the 50s an era of experimentation, like on both sides, or people who came to Cuba and all of this was happening in Cuba while you were there?
Well, it was the end of the war, and after the war ended in the '46, and all the soldiers came back from different countries with ideas that they have seen. So soldiers that were in military bands and
Right.
jazz bands. For instance, I did a couple of USO tours, and there was always a band there, you know. So these guys uh, not only had the musical background techniques but the mind, you know, the rhythms they heard in India, the rhythms they heard in Pakistan, the rhythms, it goes on and on and on. So that's
Hmm.
where we get in the USA bebop. When bebop started, it was like an explosion. Everybody, every country, I would say every country, because every country in Latin America had his own form of incredible musicians and that like jazz. You take Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, Panama. A lot of issues with Panama, with the Panama Canal in those days,
Right.
and there were a lot of jazz clubs in the zone where the ships would go in. So they brought a lot of good players. But you mix Cuban musicians with mixed with American musicians there, and when they came back to Cuba, they brought back a lot of influence. Now that's just not everybody, because there wasn't a lot of money to get a train or airplane, or you got to. It was a short wave. Everything was short wave, a radio. You heard this, you heard that. But
Right.
the nice thing about it is that the musicians heard jazz, but we have a very rich folkloric. Uh, uh,
Tradition. Right.
yeah, yes. Our country is like Cachao. Talking about Cachao, he said to me one day, "We die and we don't learn the secrets of Cuban music," which means it takes a lifetime. I'm 88 years old and I'm still learning. I
88.
still read.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
88. So I read the
Beautiful.
books and I'm still learning the foundations of the Bata drums, a background, African background, which is gorgeous. So there we come with the guys that were experimenting with that, like Arturo Farrell, Chico Farrell,
Right.
famous Cuban composer, jazz. And in the 50s, he was already recording with Bata drums, you know?
Right. I remember
So,
I heard, yeah, I remember when we, with my group, when we started doing things with orchestras, I was always pushing. I said, let's bring in more of this world music because it's always the Western traditional stuff that was great, but let's push the envelope a little bit. And I was doing some research, and I found that there was a piece written for Bata and orchestra, symphony orchestra, in Cuba in the late 50s or mid to late 50s.
there were many great Cuban composers who wrote folkloric music like that you're talking about, you know, and they didn't give it. For me, I would like it to have been played more by the Havana Symphony in those days, but they didn't. There was one called the Tríptico de Santiago, Jose Ardebol, that uh, the timpanist with the Havana Symphony, Domingo Aragu, was incredible, playing like 10 timpanis
Wow.
with the symphony. Gilberto Valdez was another composer that wrote for Cuban folklore. He immigrated to the United States, and I believe he died in New York City. But his music was never played because it was by some people. It was like, well, that's from music from Africa. The the good crowds don't like it, So they didn't play it. They didn't play it. They played the masters,
Interesting.
But we
Yeah.
had a great band, symphony band. Had some concert master from the United States, Alexander Prelucci. For many years, he was American, and many the organization would get like Odnoposov, the brothers from Argentina. They cello. They were amazing cellists, and so on. So we had a good, and Domingo Aragu, which was wonderful just to sit down and watch him play. One of the best percussionists, I think, in Cuban born. Very
Right.
good friends with Saul Goodman.
Saul Goodman. I was going to say he was often compared to Saul Goodman.
Yes,
Yes.
and they met. They were friends, and I met Saul Goodman too in Puerto Rico. And he said to me, he said, Aragu, I consider Domingo Aragu fourth timpanist in the world. He was one.
Nice.
And he was amazing. So you have all these amazing minds,
And we're talking.
You learn from them.
Yeah.
Those are we pick up things when you were a child from your father. We are very family oriented. Everything comes from your father, your uncle. I'm a drummer. My father was a violinist. I listened to the interviews, different interviews, and everyone is a family.
Right.
El Negro, all the Hernandez family, great bass players, Kiki, Felo Hernandez, Papito Hernandez, who played in the United States for a long time. Very good player. So that was an era. And then we have the other era that came after that,
But
I believe that the young people in Cuba were always inventing, invent this, invent that. You get up, go to the door. Oh, a new rhythm, a wapacha, a cha-cha-cha, la pachanga, this and that. There was always something new for the people to dance and hear.
Yeah, and was there an inside pressure on coming up with something new, right, for everybody?
Because of the background, you have so much to pick from. It's like you see a bowl of vegetables or fruits, and you don't know which one to get. So that's the way. The carnival times, you would just come out in the street and watch the carnivals go by playing Chano Pozo's comparsas, as we call it. And there were carnival times in which you just went and watched like 30, 40, 50, 100 players. Congas, Timbales. The funny thing about those days was that when the rehearsal started to form the comparsa, they started for the suits, for the guarachera, what we call them, what we wear, you would have the barber in the corner playing the snare drum. The other guy that was a butcher, he was the bass drum, and they all picked an instrument, So it was amazing when it came to that. I'm talking when I was a kid. I'm 10 years old, 9 years old, watching all this going on,
So you had a lot of comparsa in Havana, not so much, not because most comparsa is known in Santiago and the Oriente, but you had a lot going on in Havana
Oh
as well at
yeah,
the time.
yeah, yeah. Los Andes, la Caran, which means the scorpion. The guy would dance with a big scorpion on his head, big, and he would dance. You know, he would go in front. The scorpion would move. You know, but the thing with the comparsas was that they were neighborhood comparsas.
Okay.
They ran through the neighborhoods. Then after I don't know when it was in the 50s when they stopped that and they just brought it in. They would form where El Morro is,
Yes,
and
yes.
you had all the Carroza, the Comparsas, and everything would start from there. So they stopped the neighborhood comparsas, which was I don't know,
Who stopped the neighborhood comparsas?
one of those dumb presidents that we had. You know, they
Okay.
just felt like doing it. Maybe there was some uh, things that they didn't like, you know. But I remember very well, you know, like a guy playing the quinto or conga or tumbadora, whatever you want to call it. There's so much about the tumbadoras. I don't know. You got something on that? No, la conga. La conga is it's a
Yes.
drum. Uh, so you
Yeah.
know, I don't know who came up with that, but
Well, that's an interesting one. I'm glad you brought that up because when I wrote my book, after years of being down there, I said, I have to write a book to explain because now I'm here with all of these great guys, including Changuito and all of these people who have and practically invented some of those rhythms. I said, all the same questions were coming up, and there's always misinformation. I said, I'm going to work with them and try and put all this information in one place and put it in a methodology so that people who come and are interested would get it from the mess. So I did that. But the only thing I didn't do, and I kind of did it on purpose because it was too late to change this, and you brought it up. We say congas, but when I presented the book in Cuba, who was it? One of the great percussionists took me aside and said, "Aldo, love your book, love what you did, and everything that you're doing here. But there's one thing." And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, I know what you're going to say." He says, "Yeah, they're not called congas. They're tumbadoras." And I said, "I know that, but the rest of the world knows them as congas. But I specified in the book that they are called tumbadoras, that they are tumbadoras. But you can't change the world, but I think it's important for us to know."
yeah,
Right.
well, maybe he's right, of course, with all my respect. But when we had a drummer's head, we used to say, "Oye, trae la conga." We never said trae la tumbadora. Too hard
Okay.
to say in the first place. La conga. ¿Tú tienes una conga? Do you have a cover drum? Also, don't forget that the conga it's a rhythm
Of course.
that the comparsas play.
Exactly. Yes.
Here, so that conga got very famous here. They still do the famous conga line in
Which,
movies, in
which is
pictures,
based on that,
where
right?
everybody goes 1, 2, 3, kick, 1, 2, 3, kick, which is Americanized, but that's a conga. Then you had the instrument. When it was kind of big, la conga, trae la conga, bring a conga. Oscar Valdez, who was one of the best conga players, you see, in Cuba in those days, and I think he was one of the finest. He used to say that. Oye, la
Okay.
conga, trae la conga para acá, la conga, you know.
But
So, you know,
I'm just curious, was that because at the time they traditionally started just using one drum, one conga? Therefore, they use conga instead of tumbadora, which might be plural?
perhaps, perhaps,
Just curious.
perhaps because Oscar always used on all the recordings he made, and he made many, one conga. We used two congas later. When I went to Cuba in I think the first time I went was the 1993, after 50 years not going to Cuba. Uh, I went to see Oscarito, his son. Oscarito Valdez was the singer and amazing player too of Irakere, the
Right.
famous orchestra Irakere. And he told me, Oscar used to say, learn how to play one conga well, and then you put the other conga. So Oscar never played. You could see him in pictures, one conga. And I would fight with him. They said, Oscar, put the other one, because the guy that I think started fooling around with that was Patato. Patato Valdez, when he started with Conjunto Casino, he had two drums. He got a sound that was amazing, and they didn't have lugs yet.
Wow.
So
Okay.
you know, it went on. The guys started adding three, four, five. There were incredible players in New York City that were in Cuba that played five drums, like Sabu Martinez. When he went in for Chano Pozo, the story, he went to New York, Manteca, he got shot. But the opening of Dizzy Gillespie featuring Chano Pozo at the Strand Theater, which I don't know if it's still there, but there was a big sign outside. They killed Chano, and then Sabu Martinez takes over. He played five drums.
Wow.
Five congas, and a great player. Fantastic. Amazing. He went, and that was in 1940, should I say 47, 48, around there.
Okay. But where did Tata Winnie fit into this?
Tata is from a town very close to Havana. Very close. We're getting closer now to Havana. I don't know if it's Guida de Melena or Guida, which is a little town also in Matanza.
Okay.
I'm not too sure about that. But I first met Tata in a recording date that was called The Best Musicians in Cuba. And this date was done by a singer by the name of Maño Lopez, who had just come in from Europe, especially in Spain, where a lot of Cuban musicians went to Spain. Easy, the language, you know.
Right.
So when Maño came, he called me, he called Tata, he called Peruchin, great piano player. He called not Cachao. A lot of people think it's Cachao. It's Oreste Sulfre, who was an amazing bass player. He was the lead bass player in the symphony, so he did that. And who else was on that recording this? Anyway, I was like a kid, you know. I think I was probably 19 years old. I got to the recording day with my lady timbales, lady that I had brought in from New York, and started playing the cacara, and Tata. That's where I met this young guy. I didn't know him. The solo he does that there, and in that particular tune, you just gotta hear it. And that was 1951.
Right.
There was also he Maño wanted a Bata player, so Giraldo, who was part of the Giraldo Torregosa Bata, we call it the conjunto Batas. He came in with the little drum and played the Bata in that particular tune called Batacun.
Batakun.
Yeah, Batakun. And that's the first time, it was it was beautiful.
When
Don't
did
we?
they? I was curious. When did they start allowing, or when did they start using bata drums in the non-religious? Because they're more religious and a religious
Right.
instrument.
Yeah.
When did
What they
they
call.
start coming into more popular streams and recording?
Well, I have done some research on that, and I found out that Bola de Nieve, who was a great Cuban singer, did a recording very early in the 50s, and that group they play in it. Chico Farrell does the arrangements, so it's Chico's arrangements, big band, Bola de Nieve singing, and also Giraldo, Nazaco, y Trinidad Torrejosa were the names. And they were the most, and Julito Collazo, who later went to New York City. Those were the four bata players
Wow. Okay.
that would do the shows, that would be at Tropicana, they would be everywhere, you know. For stories, I have stories about them and me that were incredible. I don't know if I have the time, but you know,
And then when did you start getting really busy in Havana? You were starting to be a professional in Havana, and who were the main personalities that kind of helped you? Kecha was probably one, right, at the time.
well, when my father left New York City to
Which year?
go
Which
back to
year? Which year was
Cuba,
that?
was that?
Which year was that when he left for New York?
Oh, well, I was educated in New York City, 1940.
Okay.
1940, 1939, I think we arrived in New York City, me as a little kid. I'm not that old. I must have been like 7 years old. So I would go through all the New York scene, the schools, the public schools, until we got to um, uh, a neighborhood that's very popular, especially now because the movie West Side Story is coming out. And I
Okay.
was raised in Hell's Kitchen. And Hell's Kitchen on 46th Street has the park where they do the fight, where they filmed the first fight.
Okay.
Because there's the thing about that, I won't get into that, but that was the neighborhood, Hell's Kitchen, very close to Broadway, 6th Avenue, where all the music was going on.
Right.
Bebop,
52nd to
Latin music,
46.
the
Yeah.
Palladium, 52nd Street.
Right.
That was my hunting grounds. You just stand outside and hear drummers like Roy Burns, the other guy, jazz drummers, Buddy Rich in one theater, Louis Belson in another theater. So your mind, Gene Krupa at the
Wow.
Capitol Theater, all that went down. I think I haven't been in New York in a while. So it was easy to pay 89 cents and see Gene Krupa,
Wow.
for three shows,
Wow.
or go to Radio City Music Hall and see it was Billy Gladstone
Right.
play, who was a great teacher, great percussionist. That
Yes.
for
Yes.
many years. So the influence was there. I started taking lessons with a teacher by the name of William V. Kessler. He was a
Right.
pit drummer on the Broadway shows that were incredible drummers and percussionists playing those shows, you know. And
Right.
Cozy Cole, they wrote the
Right.
book, Cozy Cole. But I had a problem. I went to Gene. Gene did started teaching on 52nd Street across the Roseland Ballroom, where they used to dance there, but the union, local 802, took over the offices. So that's where all the musicians would hang to get gigs. Those days that was it.
The meeting grounds.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The meeting is, hey, what are you doing tonight? Let's go. I got a gig. There were many, 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 many gigs every day. My dad was swarmed with recordings and club dates, and I had Desi Arnaz that, well, Fred, what are you doing? I'm going on the road. You got Xavier Cugat, who at that point was the king of rumba, because they were different bands. They're commercial bands, and the more it got into when Mario Balsa came in from Cuba and started. René Hernandez, a great piano player, the orchestra Machito.
Right.
And then from Puerto Rico, Tito Puente, Tito Rodriguez. There was always a fight between bands. Tonight, the so-and-so playing. So there were a lot of Cuban guys and the Puerto Rican band, Tito Puente against this guy. That's the way it was. I don't think it's like that now.
No, I don't think. No, not so much. Especially that some of the clubs have been closing.
I lost your question at the beginning.
No, I wanted. It's heading in the right direction because it's about that history. Like you went to New York, but you were then you got involved in the scene in New York, the professional scene in New York before going back to Cuba.
Yes, I started playing. My first playing was in New York City, and my uncle Emilio Reyes, de los Reyes, but he went by Emilio Reyes, had his own orchestra. Played the trumpet, incredible player. He was like the Cuban Harry James.
Okay.
We always had names for everybody in Cuba, like in the United States. So Emilio offered me a job in the mountains in New York City, and it was called Totem Lodge, and that was my first job. I was 15, so I got there, had to play a show. I was scared.
But were you playing drums or percussion?
Both of them.
Okay.
That's where I started playing. Well, you had the shows. When the shows came, you had. This is the thing about playing drum set and playing percussion. In New York City, in those days, they didn't have the money to pay for big band unless you were Machito, Tito, Jose Corbello, who had a great band, Cuban pianist. There were some big bands, but not too big. It wasn't like 5 trumpets or 5 saxophones, 3, 1 trumpet, 1 alto player, 1 baritone, drummer. Now, you have to play timbales, you have to play drum sets. See? So many guys would go like this and get up from the drums, play timbales, and Latin music, whatever it was, very commercial. We're not Cuba now. We're playing for the American people. Chicky, 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 chicky. The tempos were different when you made it dancing because they wanted, da 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 da, chicky, 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 and you had to keep that chicky, 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 chicky on the side of the timbales, so it would sound like maraca.
Okay.
That's maraca. So guys started inventing. Humberto Morales, who was a fabulous drummer from Puerto Rico, he was one of my idols. Willie Rodriguez, Puerto Rican, one of my idols. Timpani, he played drum set, he played everything. So the guys that read were the guys that were working, So many times they would have the timbale here, and then you had to go into American music, and you had to have the snare drum here. So I started looking around. I said, I got a conga drum and put it on my left side. I started playing Wow, everybody liked it. Wow, that sounds great. Back to the set again. I had technique, brushes, this, society music, many styles of music. You had to play Brazilian, you had to play tango, you had to play merengue, good merengue. Where did you play it? On the set or the timbal? So there were guys that were fooling around, inclusive Tito. Tito has a record that he's playing drum sets.
Oh, I didn't know he played drums.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow.
He played everything. Tito was phenomenal. He played the alto. He played the piano. He wrote. He went to Juilliard School of Music. He was a great musician. I loved the guy, and I knew him since I was a little kid. You know, through my father.
Right.
Not those meetings that my dad would go to. I was right there with him all the time, listening, learning. That's why I could tell these stories.
Nice.
If not, forget it.
Yeah. No, guys like Tito were amazing because I didn't know he played all those instruments, and he was always.
Oh my God! Yeah. I have a picture with him when he went to Havana, and he got there. I was at the National Hotel. Boom! There's Tito. Tito, Walfredo. I take him out. There was a nightclub that the show started like at 2 a.m. and it went out through 6 a.m. That was called La Campana. And La Campana had one good thing. I had Benny More, the singer, great Cuban singer. They would all come in to that nightclub like around 4 a.m. in the morning. Oscar Valdez was there, El Negro, the trumpet player. It was actually Julio Gutierrez's band without Julio. So they had a show with Rubera. It was a place to hang out, but the best day. So Tito comes in and he gets a table. And Barroso, I don't know if you remember the Sensación, had a singer, Abelardo Barroso, was singing there too.
Didn't know them.
So Tito comes in, man, he sits down on the piano and starts imitating all the Cuban piano players. Tacasas, this is so-so, this is Peruchin. Then he asked the alto player to give him the alto, and he plays a set lead alto.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
There's no way I could spend 3 years talking about it. I love the guy.
Yeah,
he had technique. He had his style. I think when you hear Tito, it's like many other guys. They're them. That is Tito.
Yeah.
It's like Buddy Rich. You hear Buddy, it's Buddy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that Tito was such a large, musically speaking, all those instruments. I met him once. I'd seen him in concert several times, but we did a festival together. I think it was in Texas somewhere with my group one day. And we played before him, and then, he had seen us, and then we watched him, and then we got into a conversation, and I didn't know how huge he was, but I was so impressed that, he's playing vibraphone like a demon. So I said, we should do something together with our group, our percussion group, because he really liked what we were doing. Uh-huh. And I said, it would be fun to have you. And we said, yes, let's do that. But of course, unfortunately, it never happened. But, he was way too busy, and it never worked out.
Tito, I think, had we have to credit him to bring in the timbales up front, because the timbalero was always in the back. Tito went like this and I always say, you put on the tuxedo and you were the leader. And he had the timbales. But his manager said it's not enough just to have a set of timbales. So he made him play something like a Deegan set of beautiful gold bars, timbales, vibes. So, if you play mallets, you play the piano, you play mallets, you're a musician. And he also wrote.
Yes. And a
His
lot of people
arrangements.
don't know that he wrote Oyo Como Va. He was the composer of
Oh,
that. Yeah.
and his band, he like alto tenor, baritone voicing. You know, yes, in his field, I would touch him.
Right.
He did that a couple of times. Another singer that used to pop up was Tito Rodriguez,
Right.
great singer, timbale player. Tito, I took him to see Vergara, who was making the conga drums and timbales that everyone was using in those days. Tatawine, Patato, everybody had their congas and bongos from the Vergara brothers.
And where were they based?
In Batista, Reparto Batista, Havana.
Okay.
So, that thing that everybody was doing something in the 50s. But the other day, Mozambique, Peyo, his grandson, calls me, and he's Pellito.
Okay.
He's Pellito, and we talk. I didn't know him. Now, my dad used to always talk when he used to go to the Casino Parisien and sit down with you, and that would. I said, "Wow, you got pictures?" He said, "Yeah, I got pictures of my dad playing with you at the Casino Parisien. He always talks. He talks about you because with my New York kind of playing, I played a combination. I did a lot of the things that weren't doing in Cuba, like the
Right.
cacareo, the drum set with a cymbal, hi hat. I had a snare drum, and so I was playing all these rhythms. And Peyo would come in and say, "Walfredo, can I play with you? Come on in." He would come in, sit with me, and so some of the brothers from Los Papines, Alfredo was the conga player there. He would sit with me. Peyo would sit with me, and man, that was that was heaven. So we would make up things, and he
Yeah.
loved it. Wow, that's it. I love that. So I feel sometimes that when you talk about the Mozambique, I had something to do with it, you know. And I
Interesting.
used
Yeah.
to do the bells, con king, con king, don tiki, don king, con king, don kiki, con kiki, con king, con kiki, con king. Con king, con king, con kiki, con king. That kind of bell, and he used to go bad with that, and that is what he put when he did the Mozambique.
Okay, yeah, and a lot of people get that mixed up because Mozambique in Cuba is not the same thing that people refer to Mozambique in New York, and then there's a lot of confusion in that. But
Yeah, it's not a conga.
that's right,
Mozambique, it's not a
right.
conga. There's
Some people
people
play
that
it
go
as a
ding, ding,
conga.
ding,
Yeah,
ding, especially the bass drum. Gung, gung, got to, don't, gung, gung, got to, don't, gung, king, king, gung, king, gung, kitty, king, gung, king, gung, king, gung,
right.
you do it great in your book. You do a great version of that.
Thank you,
Uh,
thank you.
Many great drummers from Calito Viejo
Yes, Calixto.
plays it,
Yes,
but I'd like to play it where I could get everything in it. So I did the bass drum on the bass drum with my foot. With one hand.
wow.
The other hand, conqui, 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 conqui,
Yes,
conqui, 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 you know, trying to get everything that the percussion uh, section does, one person. If
right.
you do conga with two hands, play it with one. And I love that. I just
Yeah,
like that. I'm working now with the Bata, three Bata, timbale, conga. But you say three Batas, how are you going to play that? Well, you play the accents.
right.
One hand instead of the snare drum. Instead of the snare drum, you play with your hand on the bata. At the same time, you're playing some bebop things here, or half time, or clave or this. Anything that swings, like Louis Belson used to say, if it swings, it swings,
Yeah. Speaking of
Yeah.
Louis Belson, I was really surprised. Well, Marco in Montreal, who feeds us both of these old records that he digs up, he sent me a record that you played with with Louis Belson.
Right. Right.
Wow, that was great. I listened to that.
Okay. Louis was playing in Vegas.
Okay.
And one afternoon he said, "Hey, I'm tired of hanging around. Let's go and record." So he had Don Benson. He had Condoli. Pete, I don't know if it was Conte or Pete Condoli on trumpet. Bass player, incredible bass player. Got the studio. We go in and he puts a microphone right in the middle and sits everybody around like that. And I think we did Caravan.
Yes.
Yeah, he did that. We did that. We did a couple of tools. And, it was just Conga followed him. But Louis was unimaginable. He was a fantastic, incredible person, an incredible son, an incredible husband, and an incredible drummer.
Oh.
And musician. Well, I'm sorry, say drummer musician. He not only was one of the Buddy Rich followers, but he arranged.
Yeah.
And anyway, he always had problems with Cuban music, so he came to my house one day, and the meeting of minds. It was Alan Dawson and Louis and me, and my sons were around. And this was in Las Vegas, so we started playing, jamming here and there, and I would see him going I said, Louis, no, because that's the way it should be.
Right.
Drummer said, "No, I don't think that's right." Why? Well, here's why. So we did this thing, and I give Louis the timbales, and I said, "Louis, play timbales," and he goes like this, picks up the sticks, and goes, man, I go, Jesus! If it would have been today, I would have recorded that, because he was like. And Alan Dawson, what can you say about him?
Yes.
Another he was playing in with Dave Brubeck at the time, but he did a clinic in Las Vegas drum shop, and I took him with me home, and there we started sitting down. Said, Alan, there's more to that. Listen. So I sat on the drums and started playing some other Cuban things that I had heard in my country.
Right.
Because that's what you do. The idiom comes to you.
Yeah. But this was after you came back to the States. But let's go back a little bit when you went to Cuba. How old were you when you went to Cuba from the States?
We left Cuba after the revolution.
No. Before that, when you went to Cuba, how old were you?
That was 1951.
Okay.
Let's say 50. We got there 50. I started playing. When we got there, I was a teenager. Like now, I'm a teenager. So, I was young, enthusiastic, wants to play jazz, the pad all day long, So I started getting gigs. One of my first gigs was with singer Josephine Baker.
Wow.
So Josephine Baker has a great story. She gets to Cuba on a trip. She made it at the time. She has a history of her own. You gotta read it. You gotta get it. So they make a band for her, an orchestra, great violinists, players from the symphony. My father played the lead trumpet, me on drums, and I was using double bass drum
In the early 50s?
in the early 50s.
Wow.
I had two 20-inch bass drums.
Okay.
I was imitating Ed Shaughnessy
Okay.
because I had just seen it in New York at the Arcadia Ballroom with Charlie Ventura. I said, wow, I like that set. So I got two little 20s and two 13s, 9 by 13. So I'm playing all these, and all the Cuban drummers are going crazy. They're looking at me like I'm nuts, the big 20-inch cymbal, all that kind of stuff. So they do the band. Horin, who was the founder, the author of the Cha-Cha-Cha, was one of the violin section in that band. I got pictures of all this. So if you need any, let me know.
Sure. No.
The band was incredible. She was awesome. We loved her, But there was a guy there, and every night there was a young guy that would sit right with me, because what we did was we went up on stage and we played a couple of tunes conducted by her husband Joe Bujon, who was also a violin player. So he conducted. We did all these beautiful tunes, and then the band would come down and play in the pit, and that took like an hour intermission, and then Josephine would walk in with her beautiful dresses and furs, and she was delightful. So this guy would sit right in one of the seats, and he would start asking me questions. Where did you get the bass drum? It's a small bass drum. Wow, look at that symbol. That was Guillermo Barreto.
Guillermo Barreto.
The first time I met Guillermo, and we started a friendship through up to when I left Cuba.
Yeah. Well, Guillermo, people who are listening and watching this, Guillermo Barreto was probably one of the best known drummers of Cuba beyond. And he was the uncle of Giraldo Piloto. And now the festival that you do, the Fiesta del Tambor, is in his honor. But you worked with Guillermo a lot. He had perfect pitch. He had he was quite a musician.
Incredible, fantastic. He would write a tune on the paper, and his playing was like, I believe that Armando Peraza, the bongo player, Cuban bongo player, that was also amazing player, was playing with George Shearing at the time.
Okay.
And he told George about Barreto, and at that time, if Barreto would have come to the United States, he would have been one of the top players in this country, because he had it. He had an ear, too much ear, too much. That's bad. He would meddle with the saxophone player or tell people you're out of pitch, or that's not the B flat, it's a B natural. I used to say, Barreto, you got to stop that. Let him play. Just play your drums. No, right. He would play drums, sometimes standing up like this and looking at what the trumpet players were playing. At the bottom of the Tropicana nightclub, they had the trumpets, saxophone, and Barreto standing up. No. That's wrong. Stop it. You got to stop that.
Yeah. There's a story about Guillermo Barreto when Buddy Rich was playing in Havana. And he fell sick one night. He was there not with his own big band, but who was he there with at the time? I don't remember. But apparently, Guillermo was in the audience watching him every night. And one night...
not in the audience. Guillermo played in the band there.
Oh, in the other band. Okay.
Yeah, okay. No, he was the drummer with the show band.
Okay.
Big band. And of course, when Tommy Dorsey went in, he had all his band from the buddy Johnny Amoroso. He had Ray Wetzel on trumpet. He had great musicians, like always. So Tommy would go in and play, and Barreto would go in back of the stage and like you looking at Buddy, his mind. I could see the notes going into his mind, you know, So Buddy and Tommy go out and they get sick. They had a piece of cheese and Bacardi rum, which don't mix. That doesn't mix. So they get sick, the stomach flu and all that. Buddy couldn't make it. Buddy, Tommy comes in. He does the solo. Buddy is not on the chair. The band comes in. Ladies and gentlemen, Tommy Dorsey's band. Buddy's not there. He's still not there. So Barreto goes like this, boom, and jumps on the drum chair and starts playing Song of India, which was the second follow-up. Song of India. Boom, boom, and he's playing. It wasn't till about 4 or 5 tunes that Tommy realized that wasn't Buddy playing the drums.
Wow.
Yeah, that was like, and after that, of course, he became very good friends with Buddy. Buddy left him a tom-tom like that one you have there, 16 by 16 Ludwig. He was playing Ludwig drums, the WFL. So he left him a bunch of cymbals and a 16 by 16 tom.
Yeah,
which I have in the picture. I took a picture and used that tom.
Right. There's a picture in my book about that when he was with when Buddy Rich and Guillermo were there. And there were a couple of other people. I'm not sure who they were of those other people. I'll have to ask Piloto who they were. But I put the book that picture in the book because I thought that was a great meeting of Guillermo Barreto, the great Cuban drummer, and Buddy Rich, and this whole story. I didn't know the whole detail.
That picture was the one he was trying to teach Buddy how to play the conga.
Okay.
And the guy that's next to Barreto is Agustin. Agustin was one of the best bongo players in Cuba at the time, Agustin. And he was playing in the show band. So they took it all. I was there. They took all the picture, and he's trying to go like this, and Buddy could not get the clave, could not get it. He would break the dishes, bang, when the band was playing. They had the Bata drums also in the show, so he would go crazy, and he's playing in the back, and he gets the plates from the tables and breaks a mess, and Buddy was really mad when he would do the clave, and the guy would say, "No, that's not it. No, not there." Like a changuito style. What are you doing? No. No, wrong. Yet, if you listen to Buddy and you listen to him in some of his solos, all the accents he does and all the playing he does are in clave.
Interesting.
Yeah, you could. I've done that. There's a solo he does with a snare drum only, no bass drums in Sacramento. The band went there, and he takes a solo that's ridiculous. And if you take off all the rest, boom. Inside his solo, he's playing a timbales solo.
Okay.
The only thing is he doesn't know it. He doesn't realize it. He probably took lessons. He was open to everything. I went in one time, and he goes, wow, how fast, Yeah.
But
What can I tell you? Everybody has his own mind, his own conversation in drums. I don't see imitation. I'm going to play like so and so. No, I'm going to listen to so and so, and then from then on, you know, you pick what you can do. You create. You create like the young drummers today are very creative. You have Gad, you have Dave Weckl, you have Billy Cobham, uh, Benson Cuba, you know. But there is a Cuban way of playing the drum set.
right. Yeah.
That's that because that's the difference. Jazz drumming great, but it's a combination of Cuban rhythm with the teaching.
Sure.
You know, so you have all these young drummers who have lifted the drum set to where it's part of the Cuban section in the band today. In my days, it wasn't. In my days, a lot of drummers got up and they had to play maraca, or they had to play conga, or they had to play the bongo, you know,
right.
because the drum set wasn't accepted as part of the Cuban music.
Okay.
Now, as far accepted, I mean, the set like you have here like that, to play that in a danzón, for instance, or rumba, I got criticized very much, very much. Hey, what's that? What are you playing? Chinese music? What? Because they heard the cymbal, you know. So in those days, you love to play jazz, but it wasn't a Cuban thing where you went to see a charanga or something like that, and you had a drum set or a cymbal.
Right. So when you came in, you started adding these things and bringing like the drum set to percussion and bring them together. You were probably one of the first ones in Cuba to do that, right?
I got the. I would say I started from New York, messing around with one drum, you know, messing around. Not exactly, because right after we left, right after those gigs I did in New York, we went to Cuba. And when I went to Cuba, I had the American influence.
Right.
I had seen a lot of good drummers in New York City, and I knew them. And so I was watching. I always liked to watch Umberto. I always liked, you know, guys that were my father was playing with. So when I arrived in Cuba and I made my setup, I put a bass drum, I put a cymbal, and we played that what? What's that? That's not Cuban music. Well, you know, this album, this Cuban jazz that I did with Cachao, Los Papines. I do a solo there that was an imitation of an English drummer. His name is Ronnie Verrill. And he had this incredible English jazz band. I forget the name now. Ronnie's the drummer. And he goes...
Ronnie Scott? No.
Yeah. No, but the band played at Carnegie Hall. They were the jazz band, and Bobby Pratt was the lead trumpet player.
Okay.
You know, a great bass player from the London Symphony. Incredible player. They played so I put the clave to that. He used to do like so all those things were from drumming,
right?
Not timbales. So with the timbaleros, I played the charanga. Sensación, Buenos Días del 40. They looked at me and they, what is that you're doing? That's the way I play. Yeah. So it got on and on and on. Barreto was also very influential. Bebo Valdez, when he had the big band called Batanga, one of the best bands ever formed in Cuba, he used Barreto and Ocar and let's see, I think Lolito Candido was on it. It's a huge band. Barreto didn't have timbales. He didn't have timbales. And like, Beo, Barreto, get a set of timbales. So he went to Tito, Tito is Paquito de Riera's dad.
Okay.
Who was the dealer for Ludwig. So he went there trying to buy a set of Lidi. And he didn't have them because he had Ludwig. So he sells them the Ludwig timbales and a little set of drums like mine, 20-inch bass drum. Now he's getting, because he was playing on a 26-inch bass drum. I said, Barreto, come down. So he got his little set, which is still in the pictures of. If you get the postcards, you'll see the set in the back. So he gets a little timbales, and he loves them. Love it. And that's the timbales that you see in that recording. They descargas in miniatures.
Right.
With Cachao, Tatawine, many Jesus Pérez, Bata. He had a way of playing. He had his own thing. He did the comparsa. One of the first guys I heard play the comparsa on the drum set was Guillermo.
Wow. Okay.
Because he had two sounds on the side, like you said, but with two 16s, etc. And he would do Bata all around the drums. But he had the batas, he had Candido, he had a Laitiano, he had a section behind him that sounded like, wow. So we started playing, introducing the cymbals, the drum set, bebop, playing with the kicks, with the band, and we weren't the only ones. There was Daniel Perez, there was Fausto, there was Diego Iborra, which we call Mofeta. To me, he was one of the. He befriended Max Roach in New York City and became one of his closest friends. So Max taught him how to play the cymbals. Yeah. Beautiful, different, completely. So they were, that there was an introduction of Dizzy Gillespie and the influence of Dizzy. Trumpet players in Cuba wanted to play like Dizzy, so they started changing. No vibrato, no this, no that. The beboppers, that was that era. And, right. I mean, Guillermo passed on. I'm 88, but the young guys like El Negro Hernandez,
Rodney Barreto,
Rodney,
Piloto,
you have
and
Piloto. They have kept on evolution.
Yeah,
and their technique is flawless.
Yeah,
so some of these timbales players. Now there's that thing that we older people, we used to watch the charanga timbale, la típica, So there wasn't that much technique and playing around like there is today. Because today, the congas, I just saw a video of Pedrito Martinez that blew me away. You know, he's
Yeah.
playing the hi hat, he's playing the bata, he sings 5 conga drums, 2 cymbals. That's the I mean,
Yes.
if Oscar Valdez was alive, he'd kill
But
him.
it's interesting. I mean, there was always this appetite for experimentation, expansion, and I remember,
Yes.
you remember when you came to Cuba with us, and we had, you know, I introduced you because you did a clinic, you know, and also a lot of people who didn't know that some of the foundation that you had placed there. Besides, all, I mean, you have a lot of history with Cachao and all that, those years of the you know, the jam sessions, the descargas that were recorded, the, you know, that whole tradition, but also the evolution of this playing, one person playing everything. And you remember, we had at the same time during the Cosa Cuba workshop, that particular week, we had Roberto Smith, El Capitan,
Uh-huh.
who who was one of these guys who was like, he was
Yes, yes.
10
I
people,
love
right?
him. I love him. I have once in a while he'll text me.
Okay.
I love him. There's some guys that play like campana, you know. I mean, there's in my form of being. I don't like to put anybody down because every one of us, you go down south, you hear these guys in Nashville. I've been in Branson. I've seen incredible drummers. It's not just they're some incredible what we call country music, right? Country
Sure.
music.
Yes.
Buddy hated it. No, I don't. So these guys play like wow, you know. Listen to the bands that got New Orleans, the influence of New Orleans and Cuba, and but you know, it's what you sing, like I'm doing now, thinking, that's the way that I think it's very good to do. Very simple. You sing, you talk, and what you sing and what you talk or what you dance, you put it in the drums. If you're
Right.
doing patapa, okay, patapa, 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 pa, patapa, pa, bang, 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 bing, bing, pa, pa, patapa, patapa. You know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
a
Yes.
conversation. And it goes for American drummers too. I see young guys playing, you know, it's just terrifical.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Giant-
I mean, as long as we move forward and learn, I mean, the capacity of the human brain is incredible. I mean, just like when you started messing around, you were at that level, but the concept remains the same. We push the envelopes, we push the capacity of the human being. I mean, I
But
remember.
but but you know what's funny that sometimes the books and even now too much taping, too much the same thing. You know, you gotta be you. You gotta talk. I mean, it's like a little chain, you know. And that talking goes all around. It goes down to Venezuela, to Puerto Rico, Santo Domingo. You know, basically, it's like swimming in. You know, when I went to Brazil, I went into what they have what do they call it? What do they call it? Timbalada. So they had the people outside playing. and and they would say, "Well, Fredo, come on in and play." So I didn't know how to play that. So I'm going, I'm looking at the little bass drums. So I played Mozambique. So we got together, Mozambique, gung, gung, and it was all like a conversation of people, you know, with peace and love.
Right.
Lots of love.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, rhythm is probably I mean, as we all know, it is the universal language. So, I mean, you can go
Right.
anywhere on the planet, and as long as you know, because there are similarities, there are things that are just common words, musically
Yeah.
speaking, right? I mean, if you play clave, it's in everything, even in classical music, you know.
Yeah, I take the clave and put it everywhere you can and see if you're right or wrong. Now, who's to tell? That's the problem. Because when I went to Cuba, I did some things one day with the Los Ibelis. Remember they were playing. Ba
Yes.
ba 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 beep ba 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 beep ba beep ba ba beep ba beep ba ba. And I said, shit, you play like seven or something? No, no, no. So instead of going da 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 da, he started da da di di da 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 di da 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 da. Then you take it over, right? But the clave sounded like wow. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Well, you remember we were there together
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the festival, and then they had all these amazing. Daniel, I think he passed, playing Bata drums all day long.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. You listen to, for instance, there's one guy, Changuito. Changuito, I think when I left Cuba I was like 13 years old. So I didn't have a chance to connect with him, but he was already playing. You listen to him and that perfection of technique he has. Well, you know, but when he plays it, it's a sound, it's a conception, but he knows his Cuban music very well. That's one thing. The background,
Yep. Yep.
his background is knowledgeable on conga. Forget it.
Yeah.
So he has been the follower of all these young players, even drum players here. When he was with the Fambang, I used to play uh, all these tunes to good players that were playing with me in Las Vegas. Wow, what's he doing? Incredible. And he was doing some licks on the drum set that I've heard many, the vocals, the gat, it is, pick up on it,
Sure.
and
Oh
trying
yeah.
to play. He would listen because it's that thing of you listen to here, they listen to us. We listen to them, they listen to us. Barreto had every jazz album or recording that you could think of.
Wow.
And in those days, in the 50s, early 50s, he would bring his Victrola, as we called it, little Victrola, with the big 33 and the third recordings of, hey, listen this new trumpet player in the United States. Okay, let's hear him. That was Miles Davis. Everybody listening. Yeah, but he doesn't have a vibrato. That was the whole thing. Or either you're Harry James or either you're Miles Davis, you know.
Right.
And there were all the great bebop players, drummers. He had them all. Even
Wow.
Piloto must be enjoying that because
I'll have to ask him that if he has all those recordings and all that stuff somewhere, because it must be incredible. What would they have done with all of not only his instruments but all his music if he had that much music amassed? It'd be
No,
interesting.
you know what,
I'll have
Aldo?
to ask him.
I think that when I left in 1962, there was a band that was formed of all the guys that like jazz, like Leonardo Timoro on trumpet, Rafael Somavilla, who was an amazing pianist and arranger. They formed the band, the orchestra, that turned into later on to Iraquere.
Yeah.
See, Paquita was on it. All the biggies.
Right.
So we kept that bebop tradition. We kept because we couldn't get here anymore. Fidel went like this and said, "No more jazz, no more this, no more American." So there was a time that we couldn't pick up.
Right.
Right. Short wave. Everybody get there and listen. So that was the thing. The connection of people. You mentioned Tommy Dorsey. We had Roy Haynes come in for the Casino Parisien. Roy Haynes playing drums at the Tropicana with Sarah Vaughan.
Wow.
We had Richard Davis. We had Shelly Manne. We had all these guys come in the 50s, and we were going nuts. You had Woody Herman at the Sanssouci playing incredible. I think it was Ralph Burns, Woody, Shelly Manne,
Wow.
the Bible, but the band, the people didn't like it. They couldn't dance.
Right.
They said, "Can you believe that?" So they had to change. So every night they would go in, and Shelley would say, "Jesus, I got to play this dance music all night," because they wanted to hear more.
Right.
And they weren't playing that. They were playing bebop.
Right. Right. It's interesting, Walfredo. I mean, what I want to do is we should do another one of these to continue where we left off, because there's just so much more information that we could share. But what I was going to say is, let's schedule another. We'll call this part 1, and we'll do another part 2. But what's important is you just brought up something that's really interesting. When that bridge was finally, separated, now we've been building these musical and cultural bridges back, at least on that level, which is a great thing. The Costa Cuba workshops that we've been doing, you came down. A lot of people have been coming down and reconnecting musically, so that's a good thing. And I want to pick that up from there the next time in episode 2 of this series. So
to me, it's a pleasure always to do what you're doing. You're doing a great job of the relationship between musicians and people, just people. Next time, what I'll do is I'll have pictures ready of all these things that we've been talking about, the drum sets, the this, and
beautiful.
And I have that ready, put them here on my table, go, boom, that's it.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. Let's do that.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Walfredo.
Thank you.
To be continued. You stay safe. Speak soon.
Yeah, and a big hug to all the musicians here in Montreal, the beautiful city. I wish I could be there with you. I love that. I love the city. Canada, great musicians. There's a lot of Cubans in Canada.
That's right.
Big hello from me. Okay, Aldo. Thank you.
You will be served. Thank you so much, Walfredo.
Okay.